Here we go. This is the Skip Bayless Show, brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. On today's show, to get you ready for tonight's Game 3 of the NBA Finals, you're going to get the inside perspective from first the man who knows the most about Oklahoma sports, and then from the man who knows the most about Indiana sports. But we start, of course, with my home state, with a man I know pretty well, a man I respect very much for the keen-eyed wisdom with which he writes and speaks. For years, he wrote columns for the Oklahoman. I knew it as the Daily Oklahoman. Now the Tulsa world is very lucky to have this man. Barry Tramel, welcome.
Well, thanks, Skip. How you doing?
I'm doing better than the Thunder are right now, because this is going to be a big night for them, a big test for them. By the way, you are coming to us live from Indianapolis. Is this your first visit to Indianapolis?
No, I've been here a bunch of times for.
Have you? Okay, good.
NCAA regionals and the combine and mock draft and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
So help me out. How would you compare the city of Indianapolis to the city I grew up in, the city you know very well, Oklahoma City?
Well, I think they're fairly similar.
Yeah,
with Indy being about 15 to 20 years ahead.
Really?
Yeah. You know, for one thing, Lucas Oil Stadium and the Colts is the massive difference. Yeah. But, you know, Indy was the model for Oklahoma City.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, 1991, the two cities contended for the big United Airlines maintenance facility.
Yeah.
Oklahoma City put out a better economic bid. But United went with Indianapolis, and Oklahoma City investigated. They pretty despondent, didn't know what they could do to get over the hump. Wow. And they discovered that quality of living, quality of life, things to do, infrastructure was one of the big reasons that they went with Indy, and that was the impetus to launch the MAPS initiative that brought all the the ballpark, the new arena, the library, all the amenities that we now have, the Bricktown Canal. So salute to Indianapolis for sort of getting Oklahoma City off the schneid.
Okay, so Oklahoma City modeled itself here recently after Indianapolis.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Wow, amazing. Okay, so give me a quick flashback before we flash forward. How different is it for you covering this Thunder team versus covering the 2012 Thunder that obviously made it to the finals?
Well, they're a lot more agreeable to get along with, shall we say. You know, this is a more mature group of young people, I would say. Yeah, it's a deeper group, not just the roster. The ball playing part of it is deeper, but I think just the quality of the character, and you added veterans like Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso, and SGA has always sort of led. He's not a Peter Pan type leader. He's not a kid leading a bunch of kids. He's a pretty mature. He's a pretty mature young guy, and guys like Jalen Williams and Lou Dort and those guys have followed his lead, and so they're not a lot of selfish is the wrong word, but they really are focused, I think, on the group more than the individual, which at times was a problem back in the Durant Westbrook days. The talent was so good back then that everybody still thought it was great, and it was great. What a wonderful ride. But this group is, seems more intent with in line with the franchise directives and coach, general manager, ownership, everything, players, everything. Everybody seems like they're all on the same page.
Yeah. It was hard for me, more from a distance, to get my arm around the 2012 team, because it never seemed to me like Kevin and Russell, as much as they said, really love playing with each other. I don't know, it just wasn't nearly as lovable as this team is.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, Durant and Westbrook made it work, but there was always constant conflict. mostly not personal. Most of it was on the court. With we now have 13 years of perspective on Russell Westbrook, an unbelievable force, a great player, but the ball needed to be in his hands a lot.
A whole lot,
And
yeah.
he's on a team with Kevin Durant. So those two, it doesn't hurt to throw Kevin Durant the ball every once in a while. That's 13 more years of perspective.
Yeah.
So, that Thunder team was overachieving. The four best players were 23 and 22, two at 23, two at 22. They really weren't ready to win. And then circumstances happened in the next few years, and they just didn't get it done. This is a team, though, that needs to get it done because they are the NBA's best team. In 2012, you couldn't legitimately say these guys are better than LeBron.
No.
That wasn't really the truth. It's the truth today. The best team in the NBA is in Oklahoma City. Now, whether they beat the Pacers or not, we don't know.
Yeah.
But the best team is in Oklahoma City.
The other new development for me, again, from a distance, is this young head coach of the Thunder, just turned 40, is starting to come out of his shell a little bit more. I don't know what you're seeing from the inside out, but I'm looking from the outside in. I watched his whole interview yesterday, and he was extremely engaging and insightful and willing and open, and I found him highly entertaining, dare I say. How have you found working closely with him on a daily basis?
Skip, I started at age 17 in 1978. So that's 47 years ago I've been doing this. He's my second favorite coach to cover in 47 years. And Howard Schnellenberger's number one. I love Howard Schnellenberger. Howard Schnellenberger liked to talk football.
He did.
Football coaches, they don't like to talk football anymore. But Howard Schnellenberger would talk football. He was open with the media. He was misfit. He shouldn't have been the Oklahoma football coach.
Yeah, I understand.
But man, he was good to cover. Mark Daignault, outstanding to cover. Mark Daignault answers every question. Most of the answers are relevant and insightful, and at times, you said at times even funny. He's sort of a normal, down to earth guy. He sort of realizes, he's just a kid from Leominster, Massachusetts, that really sort of stumbled into a great situation. And he's very sharp. He's very personable. He's in a lot of ways the total package, other than, he was never an NBA player, which I guess would be a plus. But no, he's been superb, and he's in lockstep with Sam Presti in terms of the organizational ideals and the directives and the way they want to do things. And the Thunder has a way of, they want to proceed, and they've been doing that for 15 years. Yeah. So it's important to have leadership that's aligned. That hasn't always been the case with the coach. Scotty Brooks was successful. Billy Donovan was successful. Yeah. But at times you need the coach and the general manager to be walking arm in arm, and these two guys are.
Yet is Sam Presti still fairly inaccessible and very tight-lipped as he has always been?
Yeah, with everybody. Now, with the local guys who've been around, he's very accommodating in terms of if you need a question answered for clarification, he's going to talk to you. Okay. He's not going to go on the record with a bunch of stuff. But if you want to know, why'd you trade? They don't really trade people much anymore. But why'd you make this deal for? Or why'd you sign Lou Dort to a big 5-year deal? He'll explain it to you in private and say, "Look, here's why he can guard everybody in the NBA." And then 2 years later, you think, "Oh yeah, now I know why they signed Lou Dort." So that kind of thing. Sam's become a community pillar, an Oklahoma City leader off in non-sports ways in terms of like he's heavily involved with the Oklahoma City National Memorial, those kinds of things. So he's very well respected around town. A lot of people thought he'd be gone after a few years because he's so good at his job. The Celtics might come after him. He's from the Boston area, that kind of thing. But now here he is. He's 19 years. He was hired in 2006, back when the franchise was in Seattle. So he's a long timer by any definition.
So speaking of Lou Dort, you have been doing this for a long time. Have you ever seen anything quite like the way this team plays defense?
I have not. Especially, it's hard for an NBA team, a high-level NBA team, to really get a reputation known for their defense.
Yeah. Agreed.
Go back to the Heatles. They were a phenomenal defensive team. That's a young LeBron and all kinds of Shane Battier's out there running around stopping people.
He was.
But that's not what people remember them
No.
for.
No.
The Spurs in their heyday, the Spurs were guarding the dog out of you. But
They
that's
were.
not what people were known for. They were known for Tim Duncan, his all-around game, and Manu Ginobili, a magician, and Tony Parker with the ball and directing. And the Thunder has become known as just these Dobermans that, they pick you up and don't get out of the way, and you can't get rid of them, and they got waves of guys coming at you. So to me, that's a phenomenon in the modern NBA that people look at the Thunder and the first thing they think of is defense. That's just not very common in the NBA.
Well, as you know, it's very difficult to get professional NBA basketball players to focus on, to take the most pride in the wrong end of the floor, right? I mean, sure, they all care about playing defense and they talk about playing defense, but they don't play defense with the commitment this team attacks you with his defense.
Yeah, and the other thing, they're so versatile too. It really doesn't rely on one guy to carry such a load. Now, Dort, I think, is the best, because he is such an on-ball defender against superstars, and that's the rarest thing you can find.
Yep.
But he's got a couple of sidekicks that are about as good or close to it. If he gets in foul trouble, it's not a calamity. If he gets tired, he's got people, Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace, that can come in and hold the fort. And then Jalen Williams is guarding everybody, and he's guarding Pascal Siakam and Julius Randle and guys way bigger. And early in the year, they played 5, 6, 7, 8 games without a center. They got 2 really good centers, and then the third center, Jalen Williams, the other, is a pretty solid role player.
He's a pretty good player. Yep.
Yeah, and they played 5, 6 games where Jalen Williams, the small Jalen Williams, is having to be the center. So he's guarding the biggest guy on the floor, and they just adjust to it and do pretty well. So it's a very versatile defense. They can mix and match and do a lot of things. Daigneault throws in some zone pretty regular just to get people off. So it's really a defensive. It's a wonderfully put together defensive roster. Offensively, they're not as good as they are on defense, but they also have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You don't need a lot of offense other than SGA on many nights.
By the way, I know he's still very young. What is he, 26? But in star power, how is he starting to compare to KD, Russ, and James Harden?
Well, I would say he's not yet on the level of Durant or Westbrook. Part of that is because we got, as a city, as a state, we got a little jaded. Durant broke a lot of hearts when he left.
Yeah.
And people aren't so quick to give away their heart after it's been broken.
Yeah.
A championship
I
would change.
understand. That's a good point. Yeah.
A championship would change that, I think. But until that happens, people are going to be a little bit, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander looks too good to be true.
Yeah, he does.
He's just a total package, everything you want in a superstar, high quality, high character, all those things, never in trouble, never says the wrong thing, is somebody that, everybody can emulate, everybody can be proud of. But that's also how we thought of Kevin Durant 10 years ago. Yeah. And nobody really thinks of Kevin that way anymore. He's sort of become mercurial and sort of a vagabond. So we think we know SGA and we hope we know him, but we're just going to hold on to the rope a little bit longer.
Okay, that's fair. So he hasn't also broken through yet nationally to me. I probably have a little different perspective than you, but what I see in his game is he's not, a power dunker like Ant-Man is, and he's not a logo three-point shooter like Steph. it's a lot in between. And when he does get to the rim, because he attacks the rim as much as, or actually more than anybody in the league, but it's all finesse finishes, as you know, a lot of off the glass. So there's not huge wow factor because 15-foot jump shots aren't wow factor for much of America. For the casual fans, that's not going to draw them in. Is that the perspective you feel from your seat?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know when it was. Was it in January or maybe earlier than that? We had this big debate in the NBA about the future face of the NBA, and it's centered on Anthony Edwards.
Yep.
Is Anthony Edwards the next face of the NBA? And I thought, first of all, Anthony Edwards is a wonderful player. I just saw him in the, Western Conference Finals. He's clearly a superstar, going to get better. Minnesota's, lucky to have him. But he's not better than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
He's not.
This guy's just finished his third year, first team All-NBA. Not too many guys have gone 3 straight years first team All-NBA. The guys who have done that are in the holy of holies in the NBA. He's a scoring champion. It's his third straight year over 30 points a game and over 50% shooting. I don't want to start a forest fire, but that's the domain of Michael Jordan. That's who does that. So why wouldn't SGA be the face of the NBA? And part of it's he's Canadian. He's not an American. Canadian. And that matters. The other thing is what you said is he's not a social media. He's on social media more for his fashion sense than for his basketball exploits. Yeah, he doesn't dunk much. He doesn't stop and jacks 26-footers. And he's sort of an old school type player. I had a wonderful, and this will be good for you. I had a friend of mine send me a deal. He's an old guy that grew up a Knicks fan, born in New York, and followed the Knicks back in their glory days. And he found in Bill Bradley's book, he found a passage of Bill Bradley talking about Walt Frazier, and about 300 words of Bill Bradley describing Walt Frazier. And if you read it, you think this isn't Walt Frazier he's talking about. It's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with the way he's built and the way he plays and just his game. And none of us. I've never thought of Walt Frazier and SGA the same, but that was a 50-year ago perspective of Frazier. And so that's sort of the kind of ball player that he is. He's a very unique player and a guy with just incredible style, but it's not style that's necessarily conducive to 21st century stardom.
No, it's not.
The Thunder and Oklahoma City is fine with that. I mean, the way he plays is great. He's bringing back the 15-footer, the 12-foot baseline jumper, which is almost automatic. Nobody shoots that shot anymore, and it's SGA's it's his favorite shot.
And it's a hard shot too. That's a hard shot. Ooh.
Yeah, but when you're good at it, it's hard to stop.
It's hard to stop.
So it's a straight on sky hook is what it is without the hook. But so he's a unique player, I guess, is what you're saying, and I would agree. He's a very unique player.
All right. So speaking of unique, let's flip it around on the Pacers. Coach Daigneault the other night was talking. I think this was right after Game 2 about the Pacers. And was making the point they're just different than anybody else that the Thunder play. That there's not one man that you have to focus on and you have to deal with that one guy. You have to deal with the sum of the parts, with the whole. What's your takeaway from the first 2 games about the Pacers? What are you seeing in the Pacers?
Well, I think they're an incredibly unique team. We're 2 games into the finals. There's no Pacer that scored 20 points yet in a game. Yep. I mean, 19 by Siakam in Game 1 is the most.
Yep.
And if most teams, if somebody doesn't get to 20, they're hard pressed to win. And Indiana's sitting here at 1-1, and it's not terribly odd what they're doing. Their leading scorer is not their star. Tyrese Halliburton did not lead them in scoring. Siakam did this season. Yeah. And then the 2 guys that seem to be their heartbeat are, to me, Nembhard and Neesmith. Those are the guys that can take over a game. We saw Neesmith had that great 3-point shooting
Did
deal,
he?
and
Oh.
Nembhard seems to be the leader of this team. Just me sitting here watching the Pacers play for 96 minutes in these finals, it looks like Nembhard's the guy that makes them go. He's sort of their emotional leader.
True.
He's the guy that's out there generating the excitement, the energy on defense and offense.
He does.
So, and then Miles Turner is a classic modern center, the shot blocker and 3-point shooter. So they've got a lot going for them. And the question is not how'd they get here. Sometimes the question might be, why'd they finish fourth in the East? I mean, you watch them and it didn't seem to be an upset when they beat Cleveland. It didn't seem to be an upset when they beat New York. No. They avoided Boston, but which is fortunate for them, I guess. But they look like a team that's poised to be the best in the East.
Yeah. Yet, as you well know, Thunder were up 15 early fourth quarter. Maybe, what was it, up 9 with 2:52 to go in game one. And then obviously up 23 in the third quarter of game two and up 19 going to the fourth. And they mostly kept their foot on the gas in the fourth quarter this time. So did that show you that the Thunder are just better than the Pacers? Has that been proven yet?
Yeah, I think that's safe to say that the Thunder, we can agree that they're better than the Pacers. We sort of knew that coming in by the totality of their work. And in the matchup, it certainly feels that way. Indiana has led for 1 minute and 51 seconds in this series, which is 0.3 of a second in game one, and then 1:50 scattered in the first quarter of game two. And generally speaking, if this was the college football playoff committee, they'd be all about the game control. But, the Pacers are a team that you got to stay on top of, because we saw it with Milwaukee. We saw it with New York. This is a team that, you gotta beat them, because they're not gonna give up.
No,
they're down 15 with 4 minutes left. They're going to give it the old college try. That's why I actually was a little stunned when Carlisle cleared his bench.
I was too. Yeah, I tweeted about it. Like they gave up now. Yeah.
I thought that was odd. I think it was they were down 15 with 3:50 to go or something.
Yeah.
And that's an almost impossible one to come back from. But they'd done close to that already.
I know.
So I think the Thunder was pleased, saying, "Okay, we'll take it.
Thank you.
That's 3 minutes we don't have to play."
Yeah.
But it's a team you can't give up on, because here they come. And anymore, NBA games are lengthened just by the 3-point shot. If you got, if you can go out there and make 4 threes in a small amount of time, that's 6 2-point baskets, and you don't need 6 possessions. You just need 4, and that's what Indiana does the math. Then it's a math game anymore. So you got to stay on that, and they all can shoot it. Every one of them looks like they can shoot it.
Every one of them. Yeah.
So that's good.
Okay, so gut feeling, what do you think happens tonight?
I tend to think the Thunder will win, just because I've just seen them win all year. When I don't see them lose. Yeah. And when they win unimpressively, you think, what's wrong with the Thunder? Like game 2, you didn't come away. Wow, you came away. They didn't. They made that harder than they needed to, and they've just been so dominant, historically dominant. That it's hard to come back and say, well, I don't know. I think they match up pretty well with the Pacers. They've got answers to the Pacers' problems, so they've been good on the road. So I tend to think they'll win, but they need to get one of these two to get home court back.
Yeah. Okay. So another quick flashback. What would happen, hypothetically, 7-game series between the 2025 Thunder and the 2012 Thunder?
Well, I would assume the current Thunder would beat the 12 Thunder for the same reason other teams beat the 12 Thunder. They just weren't deep enough in 12.
Yeah, I got you.
They didn't go much past 6.
Yeah.
Daquan Cook, for instance, a fine fellow, but he was in the rotation pretty heavy in 2012.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. This Thunder team doesn't even see the need to start Alex Caruso, who's a phenom. And
Yes.
everybody on the NBA would say, "I'd love to have that guy on my team." He scored
Yeah.
20 points the other night and is just a defensive Doberman.
He is.
Destroys everything involved. So I just think this team is deeper. That team had more star power. Westbrook and Harden, even at 23 and 22, they were a load. But this team is designed to guard anybody.
Absolutely.
And they would have guys they could match up with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and James Harden.
I believe they could.
So, and I think they're better coached. I love Scotty Brooks, but one reason they sort of fell apart in the 12 finals is he didn't make the lineup adjustment with, Kendrick Perkins, stayed with Perk too long. So, as a wonderful team, if Serge Ibaka is your fourth best player, you got yourself a heck of a team.
Oh, dude.
But this team goes even deeper. It goes 7, 8 deep. Aaron Wiggins is a guy that sometimes isn't playing much, and he comes out and scores 18 points the other night. So they've got a lot of guys that can help, and I just think they would probably wear down the 12 Durant Westbrook team.
I would agree wholeheartedly with you. Okay, so if Presti's sitting on whatever it is, 13 first-round picks over the next 7 drafts, are we looking at a dynasty?
Well, I mean, it's fun for people like me and you to look at that. They certainly have the potential for a long run. On the other hand, they need to win one.
Yeah.
If you'd have talked June 1st, 2012, if you'd have talked to any Oklahoman and said, you probably ought to win this one because you might not win again, everybody had looked at you like you had 3 heads.
That's
because
correct.
It just seemed like, Durant and Westbrook and Harden. I mean, this is the unbelievable runway. And we're still waiting for our first parade. We haven't we hadn't gone up and down May Avenue, Skip, in front of your old Northwest class in high school for a parade. So, we gotta do something in terms of, you gotta win one before you can win 4. So I would hold off on the dynasty, but they are set up incredibly well.
They are set up.
And here's the thing people forget on why they're set up. They got the superstar, they got a deep roster, and they got all those draft picks. The number one reason people should be confident about the future is those number 2 and 3 players, Jalen Williams from Santa Clara and Chet Holmgren. They're both in their 3rd year, and Chet's really in his 2nd year because he missed the whole first year.
Yep.
They're going to get way better. They're not approaching yet their prime. So, that's where I would fear the Thunder is somebody like Jalen Williams. He's already 3rd team NBA, and he can get a lot better.
He can.
So I think that's the number one reason. SGA, we know what he is, what he's going to be. You don't have to worry about him. The draft picks will be whatever they are. Sam Presti's good at finding, players all the time. But the development of Holmgren and J-Dub from Santa Clara is the reason why this thing could go to the moon.
It could go. All right. So big picture, and there have been a time in my life I would not believe I would ask this question, but have the Thunder become bigger in the state of Oklahoma than Oklahoma football?
I'm going to say yes for this reason, and you know this, Skip. When the Sooner football does well, it's crazy. Everybody goes nuts. It's great economically. Everybody gets in a good mood. But a good third of the state not only doesn't care, they don't like it.
Yeah.
It's a divided state. Most states are on the college level. When the Thunder wins, everybody's on the boat.
Yeah.
Everybody's on the boat. And the thing I say about the difference between the Sooner football and the Thunder phenomenon is when the Thunder's down, the interest ebbs. When the Sooners are down, it doesn't really ebb. That's the passion stays high.
Yeah.
There's more anger than happiness, but it stays high. But when the Thunder's good, everybody's up, and it takes over not just the city but the whole state. All 4 corners. I got I've got 80-year-old aunts in far northeastern Oklahoma that just eat up with the Thunder.
Really?
So I mean, it's a statewide thing, and so I think when the Thunder's good, it moves to number one.
Well, to conclude this, I just hope that kid quarterback from Washington State and his boy wonder offensive genius, the next one in line, can save Brent Venables this year. That's all I got to say.
Well, the Sooners have they got a scheduling break. They don't have to play your Commodores, who are all of a sudden man eaters. They've got Alabama cowering in the corner. So it's a tough road in the SEC, as you know.
Is it?
So I think they're going to have a good football team. I don't know if they'll have a great record. Getting to 9 wins would be an awfully big accomplishment. If they can get to 8, I think that'd be a really good year. I think they're going to have a good team. I just don't know about the schedule.
I got you. Barry, you're a good man. Appreciate your time. Have a good time in Indianapolis, the model city for Oklahoma City. And I'll be reading and watching.
Hey, thanks, Skip. Good to see you.
Okay. Thank you, Barry Tramel.